Winter Roses, Summer by fairytalelovr, Chapter 48, Darkness. This is the last chapter, guys. Arya laughed loudly, a full belly laughter, as she watched Nymeria trample Drennan to the ground. The boy was also amused, as he was most things, and only laughed, quickly getting back to his feet and restarting the chase after the direwolf. There was laughter all around, children running like there was no tomorrow. "I think this place is incredible," Arya said, getting down from her horse in one swift jump. Gendry scrambled clumsily from his, still getting used to the saddle. They were in the park Danny had built in the village for the children, and other than one or two guards patrolling to ensure order, there were no adults around. "Lady Starling did a good job," he agreed. "Children don't run around creating a mess in the village anymore, and they're not at risk from being run down by a cart either." "It's awesome," Arya said, then turned to him. "How is the horse treating you?"
"Oh, he's treating me just fine. It's just we're taking a while to get to know each other."
Arya laughed. "I'll make a rider out of you yet."
"I won't mind if you do," he replied, as they walked to the water trough and tied the horses there. "When do you leave, milady?"
"I'm not sure yet. Depends on when my Lord Father and Lord Brothers decide to come south."
"I hope you won't be offended when I say you will be missed, milady."
"How many times do I have to say not to call me milady?"
"How many times do I have to say that I can't?" he threw back, making her roll her eyes.
"We could always write," she added as they climbed the slope to the small hill where the children gathered.
Gendry blushed. "Why'd you want to write to a smith?"
"I would want to write to a friend," Arya said, annoyed.
"What would we talk about?" he asked quietly.
"What do we want to talk about now? Really, what is the matter?"
He blushed even deeper. "I can't write," he confessed, and Arya missed a step and nearly rolled down the steep hill they were climbing. "Gods, are you all right?"
She pulled herself up to her full height and turned around. "What do you mean, you can't write?"
"Well, lowborns aren't usually taught."
"But don't you need to, I don't know, have some sort of control over things for the forge?"
"I can do numbers," Gendry shrugged. "Never had to learn the letters."
"But what about when an order comes?"
"Well, Lord Tarley's the one who handles that. We've got a good system. He will draw the symbol for armour, sword or dagger, and I can read the number. And then I can tally the amount I've made. It works just fine."
"That is absurd."
"No, it's not. We're lucky here with Lord Tarley and Lord Starling, actually. You have no idea how much worse it was down in King's Landing."
Arya only huffed, stomping her way up to the peak and sitting heavily under the shade of an old oak. Gendry exhaled, following her, trying to think of how to appease her. Hot pie showed up soon enough, bringing spoils from the bakery to the great pleasure of everyone around. Arya finally lost her frown when he offered her a sweet roll, and her displeasure was forgotten when they needed to rush back to the castle under pouring rain. He should have guessed she wouldn't let it go, though, for when she showed up at the forge 3 days later with Berna, one of the maester's apprentices, Hot Pie trailing close behind. "Drennan, get us a few chairs," she ordered, and the boy immediately jumped up to comply.
"What's going on?" Gendry asked shakily.
"You're learning how to read," she declared.
"I am?"
"You are," she insisted. "There is no argument on the matter. Drennan, come here, and let's make this a group lesson."
Gendry thought to argue that they should at least wait for Lord Starling, but she had her face set in the stubborn way he had already learnt to allow for no rebuke. Besides, it wasn't like she wasn't right and that it wouldn't help him manage the forge. What with the old armour getting sicker and sicker? So he only sat down and looked at the piece of parchment the maester was unrolling from his new 3 pupils. Val was torn between amusement and annoyance at the little lordling trying to sweet-talk her. Annoyance was quickly winning, though, as the man continually sang his own praises. To hear him talk, one would believe he was the greatest hero that ever lived. I seem to remember you tripping over yourself over that handful of whites we encountered the other way,
Tormund said, making everyone chuckle. That was an unfortunate accident, Theon said, though his smile faltered. I'm the best archer around.
And the most full of himself, that's for sure,
the red-haired man mumbled, turning back to the tasty dinner they were being served. Val smiled into her plate, so as not to be rude. There was a momentary lull in the conversation, as the brothers rose in respect to welcome the silver-haired woman who had greeted them earlier in the courtyard. Lady Starling, Val remembered, the intricate family names and houses still alien concept.
Lady Starling!
Theon exclaimed loudly. It seemed that the return of the safety of Castle Black, the lack of whites and white walkers, and the plentiful drink and food had made him more flamboyant than usual.
You look more beautiful than ever.
Daenerys approached the table uneasily. Lord Theon, she greeted. Lady Val, our introduction in the courtyard was too brief. Would you mind if I joined you?
Not at all, Lady Starling.
Please, join us. But I am no lady. The free folk don't bother with such frivolity. Dany raised an eyebrow. Yes, I am certain that in a land so harsh and with so many dangers, it must seem silly.
Val wanted to kick herself for the blunder. I am sorry, my lady. I didn't mean any offence.
Neither did I, Dany said, but there was a tenseness between them now. In the north we hear very little about the free folk. I would love to hear more, if you would tell me.
Have you ever seen snow in these green lands of yours, my lady?
Orell said. I was born in the south, but raised in the north. We do have summer snows. So, yes, I have seen and lived through snow.
Then you know how very little thrives in the ice.
The warg said. What Orell means, my lady, Val cut in, is that in a land covered in snow the whole time, we survive on the few plants and grains, mostly meat. Meat needs to be hunted. Our people are harsh and tough. We have to be, if we wish to survive.
We are harsh and tough on the Iron Islands as well, Theon informed with a smirk.
Yes, Dany agreed, rolling her eyes. You prefer to invade the mainland, steal, reave, and rape.
We do not so, he said simply, and shrugged.
Is that a saying? Val asked. House words, Dany explained. Each house has their own words, like a motto. House Greyjoy's is we do not sow. House Stark is winter is coming.
I don't think I ever learned what the words of House Starling were,
Theon said. We persevere, Dany replied.
The Ironborn laughed exuberantly. That's a well-given fuck you coming from you. How did you let our fat king receive that?
Dany shrugged. She had never even considered what Robert Baratheon would think, as the message had never been intended for him. Though she supposed it worked just as well. Jon mentioned that he was given a house and lands by his king, Val said, nodding to Tormund. Why would the king be upset? It seems fitting for a man who fights as well as Jon. Dany stiffened, an ugly feeling blossoming in her chest. You had many fights along the way, my lady? She asked.
A couple of fights in the night after Ghost left, that's all, Val said. But Tormund and Orell were the ones who were there when the White Walkers attacked.
And this one here, she nodded towards the redhead again, wouldn't stop talking about it. It's high praise for a warrior as stubborn like Tormund.
The Lordland knows his way to fight, that's for sure. That sword of his is a nice blade as well. That's a man to be proud of following.
I'm sure your men agree that Jon is a very good fighter, my lady, Val said. This time Dany couldn't hide her displeasure. Lord Starling is an anointed knight, celebrated in tourneys. The whole realm recognises his skill in battle. Val finally noticed her blunder. She was so used to the familiarity of her people, and they had been travelling together in such an informal way, that she hadn't given much thought as to how things would be different now they were in a castle with stuffed nobles. God, she knew nothing of southern politics, but Mance had warned her that distance was always best.
Theon laughed loudly. You know, Dany, green is not your colour. You were talking about these Iron Islands of yours. Do you mean rape is allowed in the south?
Orell asked with haste, changing topics. If the man wishes to lose his parts when caught, Dany said. Otherwise our king is the fiercest condemner of rape.
Well, you have your brother to thank for that, Theon said, and everyone in hearing range froze. Every person from south of the wall knew only too well what he meant, and silence overtook the room.
"You will not speak ill of my brother."
Dany spat through her teeth, clenching her fork so tightly her knuckles went white. The free folk only watched, curious. "It's not speaking ill if it's the truth. Your big brother took and raped—" "Ah!" Theon yelled out, recoiling when a dagger sunk into the table right next to where his hand had been rested. "I told you to mind your mouth, Greyjoy," Adam said with a cold voice and stony expression. Dany could finally see why, skilled as he was called the deadliest of her father's Kingsguards. There was nothing of the easy-going, though perhaps a bit haunted, man she knew in his expression now. "You are speaking about the former Prince of Dragonstone and the lady sister of the Warden of the North in a manner not suitable to polite company. Shut your trap or I'll help you with it." I only... the entire realm! Lyanna Stark's honour and reputation is above reproach. Do you hear me?" Adam insisted, biting his tongue to keep from speaking too much. And the Ironborn only nodded, suddenly paling even more. "Why is my lady sister's name being mentioned?" Ned asked from behind the knight. The silver direwolf sat next to him, his blue eyes fixed on the troublemaker. "Greyjoy has a loose tongue. I was setting it straight. Won't happen again, will it?" Adam asked, and Theon shook his head, whiter than the snow outside. "Good," he finished, taking his dagger from where it had been deeply embedded in the table, and giving a pointed twirl before replacing it on his belt. "Lady Val," Ned called after a moment, swallowing any comment that would have made an awkward situation worse. "When you are finished with your meal, if you are not overtired, I would hear your good brother's terms."
"Of course," she said, standing up. "Lead the way."
Ned nodded, but then turned to Adam. "On that note, I wished to talk with Jon about one thing or another tomorrow. If he would like to be there when I do." Adam blinked, his lips parted in shock. He could scarcely believe his own ears. "Yes," he said. "Yes, I would like to be there." Ned nodded, then left the dining hall, leading the three free folk to his solar, where Benjen was waiting for him. Once they were all comfortably sitting, Val began to expose Mance's terms and demands. Ned heard attentively. "You said Mancerata is on his way for a negotiation?" he asked, and she nodded. "Then I shall think it over when you have brought me, while we wait for his arrival. You are, meanwhile, to be our honoured guests."
"Thank you, Lord Stark. You are most kind," Val said. "Please do feel free to ask me any lingering questions." Ned nodded and asked the guard to show the three free folk to their rooms, where they would finally be able to rest. "What do you make of it?" Benjen asked. "That Mancerata is either delusional or he is testing us." Ned answered with a sigh. "He wants asylum in our lands, yet he does not wish to yield his power. He wants to live in the Seven Kingdoms, yet he will not recognize the authority of the Iron Throne. He must be jesting." "Well, don't hate me, but he won't be living in the Seven Kingdoms. The Watch functions apart from the throne."
"Aye, it does, but it is still part of the realm. We can't have a foreign king here without properly bending the knee or acknowledging the authority of the Iron Throne. It would cause unprecedented unrest."
"You are right, obviously. What are you going to do?"
"I think his request for a castle and some sort of leadership is reasonable. We cannot forget that the free folk will be here to function as a sort of army for the Watch."
"What would Robert say?" Benjen asked.
Ned snorted. "He would likely ask for more wine. It's all he's had for these days," he muttered angrily.
"Why, brother? Are you disillusioned?"
"You and Lyanna were right. Is that what you want to hear, Benjen?" He exhaled heavily. "I was so busy looking at the boy I knew that I didn't notice the man he'd grown to be. Lyanna warned me, and I didn't listen. I should have. If I had—"
"Stop, Ned," Benjen said softly. "It's not your fault."
"If I hadn't suggested the betrothal—"
"Don't be naive, big brother, please.
It was not your suggestion that brought Father's attention to Robert Baratheon. Do you really think the Warden of the North needed help of his second son to think of a betrothal for his daughter? Ned didn't reply, and Benjen frowned. Ned, have you really been blaming yourself for that all these years?
It was.
Old gods in their trees, Ned! I cannot believe this! Do you ever not blame yourself for something?
Ned blushed deeply. Moving on. I have been thinking of something I left the capital. Something I am quite certain the Lord Commander might agree to, now that he will have men to fight for him.
Really, brother? Benjen said, but Ned only raised an eyebrow. The younger brother rolled his eyes. Fine, fine. Have it your way. But don't think this argument is over. Tell me, what is your plan? Margaery ruffled through her trunk, looking for yet another pair of woolen leggings. She had known it would be cold, but she hadn't expected it would feel like this. She was a child of summer, never through any real winter, as the weather at the Reach was more than pleasant, so she was certainly not used to this.
Wait, so you broke the betrothal? Garland asked.
Don't be ridiculous, brother. Of course I haven't.
But you want to.
Margaery rolled her eyes. Men, she cursed under her breath. Of course I don't want to. Did you really think I would have come all this way only to tell him it was over?
I really don't understand women, Garland said, shrugging. But I see how grandmother always gets what she wants, so I know better than to underestimate you.
Oh, sweet brother, you have no idea how straightforward we are, really. Before he could reply, however, there was a knock on the door. Margaery smiled lazily as Garland rolled his eyes before going to the door. Who is this? She asked.
It's Rob, he said through the door, and Garland opened it. Oh, I'm Garland Tyrell, Lord Rob. Oh, of course. How do you fare, Lord Garland? Well, thank you. A long voyage, but enough adventures to fill my time. Certain, Rob fidgeted. I would like to speak to my betrothed, if it would be possible.
Are we still betrothed? Margaery asked softly, biting back an eye roll at Garland's comic face behind Rob's back.
I would like us to be, the Northerner said, offering the direwolf necklace. If you would have me.
Well, she said, not moving to take the jewel, I suppose that after I travelled this far, I should at least listen to you. She threw her brother a meaningful side glare.
I'm not sure this would be best, he said, thankfully playing along. My lady sister deserves better than empty apologies, Lord Rob. I know, my lord. I would like to try.
Let him, Garland. I wouldn't want to disappoint father. And then she turned around to look at the fireplace.
Garland nodded and left the room. Rob started. I don't know where to begin. I was a fool, Margaery, and it was nothing to do with you. I didn't think to inform you. Not because of you, never because I don't trust you, but because I am still learning, he exhaled. I can't promise I shall never fail you again, but I can only promise I will try. I will try my hardest, every day, to be true and faithful to you, to respect you, and how much I love you.
She gasped.
You said you gave me your heart. But you were wrong to think I didn't care about it enough to keep it from harm. Because the truth is, I'm the realm's biggest fool for not realizing until today that you stole my heart as well, ran away and hid it within your loving care. And I couldn't be gladder for it.
She felt tears fill her eyes, and finally accepted the necklace he still offered. When its weight finally settled back around her neck, she turned around and pulled him in for a deep kiss, teasing him, hearing him groan at the sensation.
We,
he mumbled after a few moments, coming up for her.
We shouldn't,
he said, though his hands pulled her even closer, encroaching further under the wraps of her cloak. How can you dishonour me when I hold your heart and you hold mine?
Rob was certain there was a flaw in her logic, but right at that moment,
He was beyond caring. Guillaume Mormont was sitting at his desk, rubbing his temples. Castle Black was overflowing with visiting nobles and their escorts. He would be upset with the income of visitors and the chaos they caused, when it came to accommodations, if it weren't for the supplies they had brought with them. For even if they had more mouths to feed, their stores would be full for an entire year or more. He was also having to deal with the discontent of his master-at-arms. "It is a mad plan, Lord Commander," Sir Alistair insisted. "So you have said, and have been saying ever since Lord Rob and Lord Starling first presented it, and the days before we left, and every moment since I have returned," Mormont bit back. "I have not, and I will not change my mind, sir. You are bordering on insubordination." "It's wrong, my lord," Marsh muttered. "Unnatural," Yarrick agreed. "This is an aberration," Sir Alistair exclaimed. "A betrayal of the Night's Watch values to consort with our enemy." "In the name of all the gods in this wretched land, man," Mormont punched the desk, "it is not possible. It simply cannot be that you have not realised that our enemy is different. Our enemy are the others, and because they have retreated into their frozen lairs, we found nothing to fight but the wildlings. Maester Aemon has the right of it. They are the same as us. They only happened to be further north when one of us came and built this fucking wall." He stood up and reached for a horn and drained it in one gulp. "But let's say, for the purpose of this argument, that the wildlings are the enemy. I still prefer to think that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. I'd rather work with the wildlings than have them become a part of the army of the dead. You have not seen a White Walker, sir. Trust me, you would easily agree. After all the brothers we have lost, after all that we have suffered," Sir Alistair tried again. "I am a northerner, sir," Mormont reminded him. "Me and mine have suffered far more, and for far longer of wildling invasions. But as it is now, the others are encroaching on their territory, and they will move south before they surrender to the dead. And the Watch simply does not have enough men to stop them. Hold them back for a handful of days, perhaps, but not for long. I have no intention of fighting a losing battle." "I see you have made your decision, then," the Southerner said. "I have." "Then you leave us no other choice, old bear." Mormont frowned, put down his horn of ale, and began to turn around. But he was too slow. By the time he was facing his men, he heard a cry of warning, and then all he saw was a flash of metal before chaos descended. John made his way to the Lord Commander Solar, thinking over his argument to the whole dragonglass trade. The Watch was likely to accept, as they would have enough men and people farming once the wildlings settled in the gift, and weapons would be very precious to them. He heard the raised voices as soon as he turned into the right corridor. He frowned but continued on his way. The door to the Lord Commander Solar was open, and his hand went to Longclaw in an automatic gesture as he heard a blade unsheathed. "You have left us no other choice, my lord," John heard, hurrying the last few paces. "We do this for the Watch." "Watch out!" John called as he burst into the room, seeing Mormont with his back turned to the other men. Chaos descended onto the room. The Lord Commander had no weapons, and he hadn't expected his own men to turn on him, not in his own Solar. The other men were expected to fight an unarmed, ambushed man, so they only had daggers. Sir Alistair was quick to pull out a sword, and took over once John had pushed Yarrick away, clinging to a clearly broken wrist. Their swords crossed with a clang. The older man was indeed a good and experienced fighter. But after growing up under Sir Roderick's tutelage, John trained every day with Arthur Dane. Combined with a few decades less, it was an unfair advantage, and he was gaining ground too fast. Then a fifth man jumped from the back of the room, where John hadn't seen him, tackled him to the ground. John lost his footing for a moment, but it was enough for the brother to grab him from the back, forcing him onto his knees, and for Sir Alistair to point his sword at the lord's neck. "Would you kill an unarmed man, Sir Alistair? I thought knights had honour," he spat out. Fallen behind his desk, the Lord Commander was lying forgotten, groaning in pain. "Oh, you have some cheek, bastard," Thorne said, and John bristled. groaning as the brother holding him twisted his arms more sharply. "You dare ruin the honour of a princess, and you come to speak about it? You, Lord Snow, are the bastard of a traitor. You deserve a traitorous death. You have meddled enough. I thought you were shielded. But now is my chance to defend the glory and honour of House Targaryen. The only reason Robert Baratheon allowed Daenerys to live and then become a lady to a castle was because of our marriage. You kill me, you kill her." A sinister smile spread on the man's face. "I have seen how her men follow her. She will be a great ruler one day, I am certain, when her honour is repaired and she is restored to her family's power. You, Lord Snow, are a hindrance, an obstacle to her greatness. It was your mad ravings that got the Lord Commander to betray the Watch. So, when I do this..." He slid his sword down the rest to top of Jon's heart. "I do this for the Watch. And I do this for House Targaryen." Jon felt the blade pierce his skin, and pain exploded and haze his senses. His blood boiled with fiery pain and froze with cold fury. He heard the howl of a wolf and the roar of a dragon. Two beasts competing for space. His arms were released, and he fell down like a cut marionette, blood oozing out of his chest as his life faded away. The dull, dirty ceiling of the solar faded to whooshing white and black, and somewhere he had the fleeting thought that Ghost was coming. The howling and roaring became louder, and then his vision went red, as if a ruby were dancing in front of his eyes, and the air was filled with the sweet aroma of winter roses. "Daenerys," he whispered with his last breath. "Lyanna, little Adam," he thought as darkness finally took him. In the citadel in Old Town, thousands of white ravens flew away to announce the end of summer. End of chapter, end of story. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that one. Holy shit! Oh boy! Oh my god, yeah, just wow. In total, I like Margaery's manipulation of Rob, as I said in the last chapter, and oh god, Sir Alistair, someone give that man a punch. The next story is 52 chapters long and doesn't seem to be complete, but I will do it, I promise. It hasn't updated though since March of 2022, but it's got 52 chapters, so it's still good. And Riley, I hope you enjoyed this. And again, I cannot thank you enough for mentioning me in that podcast. Oh my god, was that such an honour. And you actually gave me the kick up the butt I needed to get this one out. So I will be doing the sequel as well. So don't you worry. Winter Roses Autumn is coming soon. Anyway, the rest of you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, girls and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.